without wasting any more time, I hope you do have your lunch pack with you because it's about to get tricky. Hopefully this time your lunch pack or your lunch entails fish because we're talking about the ocean economy. I'm a big fan, or a big consumer rather, of things that come from the ocean, particularly sushi. That's my favorite. So we do have an amazing panel of experts who are here. They are here from different parts of the world and globally as well. So we truly are privileged to have them join us and share their expertise on this particular subject matter. The ocean economy is not something that's just affecting Africa, but it is something that is a global phenomena. And so we're looking at discussing the following. We know that research has shown that with better management and technological innovation, the ocean could provide 6 times more food than it does today, including more than 2/3 of the protein needed to feed the future world population, provided it is sustainably managed. So let's see if our experts will tell us that it's true. So we have the president of the African Women in Maritime, Miss or Mrs. Jean Chizore Anishe. We also have the senior program manager at Africa, Middle East and South Asia Maritime Stewardship Council, goes by the name of Mr. Michael Marriott. We also have Professor from the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries under the Fisheries Economics Research Unit in Ocean Canada Partnership. So thank you very much, or rather Professor Rashid Soumailia. Thank you very much for joining us. We then have the Maritime Project Leader and Senior Researcher at Institute for Security Studies, Mr. Timothy Walker. Thank you very much for joining us there, Timothy. Last but not least, we have the CEO and co-founder of Ocean Hub Africa, Mr. Alexius Kroskopov. I hope I said it right. I tried. Something like that. It's French. Oh, there we go. It just had to flow. No breaking of vowels. My apologies for that. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. I think we only have one rose. I don't want to say amongst the thorns because there are no thorns here, but let's start with the rose. Maybe she can set the foundation for us. Ms. Jean, the president of African Women in Maritime. Welcome. Ms. Jean, I think you are on mute.
Yes, thank you very much, Beverly. Yes, indeed. Yes, good afternoon, wherever you are. Greetings from WIM Africa to everyone. We appreciate the fact that there are various organizations that have been set up to help nations attain a sustainable ocean economy. And WIM Africa is an example of such organizations, being an institutional framework for capacity building, cooperation and entrepreneurship to assist African women in the maritime sector. However, women have, from the inception of time, played a significant role in the world's economic development. Thus, the concept of ocean economy is defined along with the role of women in the blue economy, which is something that cannot be undermined. WIM Africa has always played a pivotal role in the development of the ocean economy since 2015 and has been engaged in a lot of debates throughout the African continent. In its bid of fulfilling its obligations towards the sustainability of the ocean economy, WIM Africa has organized a roadshow sensitization program aimed at sensitizing the general public on how to live in harmony with seas and oceans to avoid maritime disasters such as floods, pollution, as well as education on the protection of our seas and oceans. Some of our activities include WIM Africa's policy and strategy to assist the national relevant authorities in countering illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing at national levels. We also assist in the development of a comprehensive research initiative mechanism for WIM Africa to champion the promotion and sharing of best practices within Africa's marine and maritime sectors, and so much more. We further appreciate that the concept of the ocean economy has been since the creation of the world. and it has been the concern of men and women because the first men and women lived by picking, hunting, and fishing. These activities were done around water points, such as rivers, lakes, and seas. And the African continent remains the cradle of the said natural resources. For the millennia, it was necessary to invent techniques to master nature and make fruitful exchanges between communities through the construction of means of travel such as canoe, boats, ships, and also the construction of infrastructures such as jetties, terminals, access channels, and legal instruments applicable to each community. Thus, the current finding is that any sustainable development or any sustainable development project in Africa without the involvement of the female genius is doomed for failure. Having said that, we have recognized issues affecting oceans sustainability, one of which is overfishing. Overfishing is simply a situation where humans catch too much of this fish from the oceans in such massive amounts that at a fast pace that nature can naturally replenish. Overfishing also leads to a degradation of our oceans and enhances a non-sustainable use of the world's oceans. Scientists and researchers report that fish populations have fallen to a level that can be called a crisis. And so what makes matters worse is that other marine animals are destroyed in the process. Another issue affecting ocean sustainability is the chemical pollution. Chemical pollution is another big threat to our oceans. It is the introduction of harmful contaminants, common man-made pollutants that reach the ocean include pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, detergents, oil, industrial chemicals, and sewage. Many ocean pollutants are released into the environment far upstream from coastlines. Another of these issues affecting sustainability of our oceans is carbon levels. Now, the amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean is increasing as we release more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This is because ocean absorbs 30% of carbon monoxide, or carbon dioxide, sorry, in the atmosphere. So the more we burn fossil fuels and allow deforestation, the more carbon the ocean will absorb. Thus, an increase of carbon in the ocean results in an increase of hydrogen ions and a lower pH. This process is called ocean acidification and has many repercussions, negative repercussions, on marine life. One example is that shellfish and coral find it harder to build and maintain their shells or skeletons or structures. Another issue affecting the sustainability of the oceans is the habitat loss and damage. Habitat loss and damage is another difficult issue that needs to be addressed. We're not going to stop there. The spread of COVID-19 has also disrupted lives. These pandemic times has affected communities and economies worldwide, including those who depend on oceans for their livelihoods. The coronavirus pandemic also health and the environment, resulting in an increased use of single-use plastics and increased production of medical waste, which can end up in the oceans. The World Bank Group is uniquely positioned to tackle this issue and will continue to do so, thankfully. And so for us in WIM Africa, we want to propose our recommendations to foster a sustainable ocean economy.
Thank you very much for that Ms. Jean, we're looking forward to engaging further on the achievements that Women Africa has done and how we can use that as a template moving forward. Mr. Marriott, over to you.
Thank you, Tabang. I was just making some notes there because I'm very pleased that the previous panelists brought up overfishing. The latest United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimate is that roughly just over a third, about 34% of global fisheries are currently being overfished. And this is a trend in the wrong way if we look in the past couple of decades. Since overfishing really came to the fore, it's increased by roughly 7% or so. And it's the reason that the MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council, was set up. Our main remit is to try and address the problems of overfishing. And we do this by setting a sustainability standard, an environmental sustainability standard, and then work with supply chain actors in the market to try and incentivize buyers, consumers and supply chain buyers to preferentially procure from fisheries that can demonstrate their sustainability. My role, I'm Michael Marriott, I'm the program manager for our region, Africa, Middle East and South Asia. And really my role is to promote the MSC program. We have different offices around the world. It's a global initiative, looking really at addressing the global problem of overfishing. I think it's inescapable, even though the trend is going the wrong way, we do know that sustainable fishing is possible. We've demonstrated that, and roughly 14% of fisheries now are certified to the MSC standard. And the trend in those fisheries is the other way. So overfishing is actually going opposite to what the global trend is. And I think what's important to recognize is that sustainable fishing actually in the long term is more productive than unsustainable fishing. And that's something I think that was key that came out of the paper that you raised earlier. And so I think it's hugely promising that they're talking about up to 6 times. I'm surprised that the figure is that high, but it's promising that there's that capacity for the blue economy to contribute to the food security of the future. I think what we do need to just recognize is that that's only possible with fundamental changes in management and putting sustainability of that resource front and center. And that's going to be a big challenge going forward. Certainly not insurmountable. It's something that we as the MSC are working towards, and I think a number of other organizations as well. And I think I'll leave it there for the other panelists to introduce themselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marriott. I was about to ask for clarity there, that if it's the MSC cruise, so that we know where to inquire for holidays once you're back in the game. But I'm aware that it's a different ball game altogether.
Different ball game, yeah. Thank you.
The whole MSC, the abbreviation is well famous for the cruise. But I'm just joking. They're just throwing a spanner in the works. Thank you, Professor Rashid. You are mute.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so thank you, and thanks to the first panelist for laying the ground. I'm Rashid Smaila. I'm based at the University of British Columbia, and I describe myself as an ocean and fisheries, interdisciplinary oceans and fisheries economist, because the ocean and fisheries cannot be managed by one discipline, right? It's very interdisciplinary. You have the nature side, the people side, culture, food, economics, what have you. So you need to work together in an interdisciplinary fashion to be able to sustain our ocean. That's point number one. Point number two is when we talk about the ocean economy, essentially we're talking about activities, economic activities that depend on the ocean in some way. Not fully, partially. When you are fishing, you depend on the ocean. When you are transporting things on the water, you are dependent on the ocean, and so on and so forth. There are many elements of this. Now, one way to look at economic activities is actually there are economic activities that depend on the living ocean, okay? That's the fish and the fisheries. And there are those that depend on the dead ocean. So the ocean can be alive, which is, I think, what most of us want. But the dead ocean can also give you something. You can transport your things on the dead ocean, no life in the ocean, God forbid, right? So that's why everybody is talking about sustainability. We need to keep life in the ocean going because many of the benefits we get depend on life on the ocean. Point number 3, if you look at our relationship with the ocean, there are 2 things we do with the ocean, with our natural systems. We can even talk about the environment. If you boil down things to the basic things we do, there are 2. One is we go to the ocean, we go to nature, we take the things we need, we want, we desire, all the good stuff we take from nature, take it into our economy. That's the ocean economy. If you're thinking about the ocean, do all the stuff we do, all the production, processing, eating. And at the end of the day, what do we produce as we do that? We produce waste. And where do the waste go? They go to nature, they go to the ocean. So you take good stuff from the ocean, you pump out bad stuff to the ocean. Just think about that. If we don't do this wisely, cleverly, use all our brains to do this wisely, we are going to kill the source of the good stuff. And this is what all my life, what I do is how do we ensure that we don't destroy the source of the good stuff? How do we use the resources to benefit as many people as possible? And this brings me to Africa. How do we make sure that the fisheries of Africa, the ocean economy of Africa, actually works for people living in Africa? That's very crucial. There's no point in having all these resources and they just get shipped away, which is our history. So for every person on this call, the young people in particular, our goal should be to help Africa manage its ocean sustainably through time, for its people, for the people living in the continent. So I think I'll stop here and pass it on to my colleagues. We will get into discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've raised thought-provoking questions there that I look forward to engaging on with your fellow panelists. So thank you for that. Can we have Timothy, please?
Thank you very much, Tabang. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak today as part of this panel. Some I'm meeting for the first time and some, like Jean, who we've worked with before for a couple of years now, which is a delight to be complementing what you're saying. I work at the Institute for Security Studies. I'm the Maritime project leader there. And that ordinarily might involve a lot of focus on things like piracy, illegal fishing, transnational crime, which is not always very clearly linked or not very easily relatable to the major topics of today around sustainable development and the sustainability of the initiatives which we are looking at. Now, the job that we see ourselves producing here at the ISS is to emphasize the importance of seeing maritime security as almost like the other side of the coin of sustainable development and blue economies or ocean economies. It is an enabler. It is not an end in itself, but many of the hindrances I believe we are encountering in terms of transnational cooperation between countries in Africa, but also around the world as well. Often in terms of the kind of the non-linear impacts of what happens at sea. Think of the impact of disruptions to port and traffic and shipping, which landlocked countries will face if they are hindered in terms of what happens at sea. There's a number of linkages which are not often well understood. We often use that term sea blindness or the kind of land bias to try and understand why we're not talking about these things more often. We are seeing that as a key, like say, enabler, as to talk about maritime security is to talk of it, how it will support economic growth and development in the future. And there are 2 major contextual factors or backdrops, which I'll just emphasize very quickly, which anchor, if you forgive my love of nautical metaphors, the discussion we want to have. First one is the impact of climate change, in particular on the potential for coastal migration and the growth of not just mega cities, but small urban or towns along the coastline, which are likely to increase in size over the next 10, 20, 50 years. Now, the opportunities for economic livelihood, the need for food from the oceans will increase, or the demand on limited resources, which are sometimes increasingly difficult to extract. Now, I'm not saying these are security issues which are likely or bound to occur. In fact, we're not trying to say they are insecurity things that we need to be threatened by, but early warning and forecasting and factoring in the likely trajectory of population growth and areas which are affected by climate change, if it's sea rises, if it's acidity, like Jean mentioned as well earlier, and the need for that kind of interdisciplinary thinking that Professor Rashid was mentioning just now. That needs to be occurred and factored into our thinking now. And it's through organizations like and institutions like the African Union or international organizations which will help kind of helm that kind of conversation. The reason we mention that too, and this is the second point before I finish, is that Africa, as I'm sure many of you know, the population is likely to increase over the next 10, 20, 50 years in all countries. Now, with a kind of a coastal migration trend, which is likely because of climate change in inland areas, think the Sahel region, think other parts of the African continent, which could be caused by conflict over resources or just the fact of the loss of livelihood in some areas. Plus the fact that to keep in line or keep tracking along this population growth will be the need to grow our economies at the national and coordinated level as well. Every country will need to experience a level of economic growth to keep up and provide jobs and livelihoods and sustainability of security. Most of that will come from trading with the outside, as well as other African countries under the free trade agreement, which has just been signed. So a lot of the investment is going to go into coastal cities. There's going to be a huge clustering of policy, economic, security, development, cultural, even sort of focusing around coastal areas. And like I say, factoring that into the conversation now is absolutely crucial.
Thank you so much there, Timothy. You really have also set ground for us to speak about the aspect of governance, legislation, and policy. And I like what you mentioned about maritime security. I think it's a point that is well undermined in the industry, or not really. We don't pay much attention to it. Thank you so much. Alex, can we have you there?
Thanks, Taban. Thanks, colleagues. I'll try to be very quick in the introduction so we can get to the discussion. My name is Alexis Broskop. I'm French, but I moved to South Africa 4 years ago. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ocean Hub Africa. We are an ocean impact accelerator based here in Cape Town, but operating pan-African, trying to empower African entrepreneurs in building and growing sustainable ocean businesses. So contributing to the transition from an ocean economy to a more sustainable ocean economy. But not only sustainable, equitable as well. I mean, it's shaping better interactions between people and ocean. It's not just the ocean, the people are important in the process as well. When it comes to, innovation and the choice that we've made in our organization to focus on innovation is because we do need, Tim, a lot of policy around, changing the environment and the regulations around ocean economy as a whole. We need also educational platforms, people that raise awareness, to change people's behavior. But we believe that innovation is essential in order to implement the change. If people want to see things, they want to do things differently. If governments impose regulations to do things differently, it doesn't provide the businesses with the tools to actually do things differently. So we're trying to foster that innovation in order to fast track the transition. And we believe that innovation can meet the pace and the scale of the ocean challenges around overexploitation, pollution, and global warming as a whole. Now, in terms of blue food and what the ocean can provide, clearly throughout the world and also in coastal Africa, seafood and ocean resources, food resources are the cornerstone of a lot of livelihoods, economies, and even culture, right? They're based on animals, but also algae and plants. It's not limited to only the animals themselves. And there's a wealth of different ways of harvesting these resources sustainably. Yes, of course. Thank you, Michael. Of course, there are sustainable fisheries out there. It is in Africa in particular necessary, right? People look at ocean sustainability from the global north as a little luxury. So when they go on the beach, for holidays, they have clean blue waters. But for a lot of coastal communities in Africa, it's essential. They need the ecosystem services of a healthy ocean. So they've been trying to do, and they've been working around artisanal fisheries in a sustainable manner for a long time. Industrial fisheries is something different, and it's why we need security. The ocean provides proteins for over half of the population on the planet. They create hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs, rather, internationally, and they're a source of healthy diet for a lot of people. And coastal resilience, the ecosystem that are built around fisheries help with coastal resilience. They are essential to tackle climate change, so we can't do without it. And essentially, they also have a lower environmental footprint than the land-based proteins that we might grow. So for all of those reasons, the oceans is definitely a space to look, to grow the activity, but we need to do this in a different manner than what we've done thus far. We need a healthy ocean to have a wealthy ocean, and to be able to leverage this for all the communities in an equitable and sustainable manner. And for this, we need reforms in governance, we need more monitoring, we need more equitable resources put into the process of harnessing in a sustainable way these oceans. And so we believe innovation has an important role to play in this.
Thank you so much, Alexis. I think all of you have, you each are introducing topics, obviously under the ocean economy, that are just seminars on their own. It's like we need really like an hour each for every topic. But let me start with you, Professor Rashid, and then I will go to Ms. Jean, and then we'll of course continue. I think you mentioned something very critical, that we need to keep life in the ocean going, because there are economic activities that depend on the ocean. But now, going back into the African context, what is Africa, I don't want to say what is Africa doing wrong, but what can Africa do right to ensure that it manages its ocean sustainably?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. That's a really big question. Like you said, I mean, there's tons of things. So I will just contribute a little bit. I'm sure colleagues will add more. For the continent, I think first and foremost, we really have to do our best to stop illegal fishing. I think that's one big one. I mean, we published a paper in 2019, 2020. And these days, the years go so fast. This time. So, and in there we saw that actually Africa loses billions of dollars a year to IUU fishing. They take off the fish and they take it away, and the jobs are gone, the processing, everything is gone. So that is one. Another thing that we can do, fortunately, the continent has a number of regional organizations. You have the ECOWAS in West Africa, you have the SADC and so on. Collaboration is very important because we share the fish. The fish move in and out. So the more we can collaborate, the better. And this connects to the illegal fishing too, because Togo, for example, doesn't have the means to protect its waters. And the water is connected to all the Gulf of Guinea countries. So how about you have a regional hub, let's say, where you actually take the cross-country issues connected to the ocean, so you can chip in, get resources, and push out illegal activities and criminal activities. So collaboration, I think, will be central in research, in management, in funding, and all sorts of things. So I'll just stop here because there's so much to do.
Thank you so much. I think maybe, Madame Jean, you can extend on that statement, just to say, where's the interface between infrastructure development and ocean sustainability? Just to extend on what Professor Rashid has said.
To me, I think Alexis said it when he talked about technological innovation. That's very important. That's really key. Sure. And for us in WIM Africa, we believe that to foster greater international cooperation in maritime science and technology, we need to ensure that we stimulate innovation and strengthen the sustainability of the oceans through technology. That's very important. And of course, on collaboration, like Professor said, yes, indeed. I know that in my country, in Nigeria, the government agency known as NIMASA, Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, under the aegis of the federal government of Nigeria, has a project known as the Deep Blue Sea Project, which is to assist to curb the piracy and all other forms of insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea region. Now, collaboration with other West African countries, particularly in the Gulf of Guinea region, is ongoing between Nigeria and those countries, allowing them to leverage on this very expensive and huge project known as the Deep Blue Sea Project. This is good. And IMO has confirmed that since the birth of the Deep Blue Sea Project and its extension to the Gulf of Guinea regions and West African coast, there has been a drop in piracy in that area. So this is the effect of collaboration, and I agree with what Professor said. Collaboration is also good.
Thank you so much for that. I think that I was going to Tim. Oh, Michael, actually. Hi, Michael. You still with us? You know the screen. I'm telling you, this screen.
I'm still here.
Can really confuse you. I wasn't going to. I didn't forget about you. I was going to find you eventually. Maybe let's go to you there, Michael. Because obviously our topic here is food security, and for somebody who is involved in overfishing, they wouldn't see it as much as it's a crime. They wouldn't see it as a crime because of the desperation and the amount of food deprivation in Africa, right? So maybe you can just paint what are the harms to the economy caused by overfishing?
Sure, it's a complex question. That I think when we're talking about overfishing, we need to look at what we mean by sustainable fishing and good management. And I think there are multiple strands, and it comes back to something that Professor Rashid said. We first of all need to understand the resources that we're working with. So, to be able to manage something effectively, we need information. And to have that information, we need to put money into research. We need the expertise, the technical expertise to be able to look at the stocks. So before we even get to the point of defining where the overfishing line is and how we combat that, we need to first define what good looks like. And I think it takes more than that information. It takes political intent. At a political level, we need our policymakers to be choosing between short-term economic gain and longer-term benefits, sustainability benefits. And that all comes down to how we treat the small fishes versus industrial fishes, that sort of thing. As it stands, because of global economics, I guess largely, the funding and the bulk of the management expertise tends to go towards fisheries that make a larger economic contribution within their management framework. So if we're going to look at really addressing the overfishing at the level that you're saying, the sort of illegal fishing at a small-scale community level, we need to probably be finding ways to channel some of the funding that goes into fisheries management to really understanding the stocks that those fishes are operating on and the community level cultures as well.
Thank you so much for that. Let me go to you, Timothy, just before I go back to Alex. You spoke a lot about transnational crime and maritime security. I'm very much interested to know, how does maritime security support the agenda towards sustaining the ocean economy?
Well, we would see it as the need to ensure better governance under international law, and unfortunately, just the way things are, that states are required or are the major sort of law enforcement actors. And many African states are not able to provide the kind of tangible means of presence or deterrence at sea. We heard from Jean the Deep Blue project in Nigeria. It's a fantastic example of African maritime agency and assertiveness in a kind of sort of a context in which you must recall that most African countries have only become independent, obviously over the last century or half a century, and never inherited navies to begin with. Navies were kept in the hands of European powers who had been obviously exploiting and using their navies for their foreign policy objectives for 500 years. So this is only in the last 30 years we've really started to consider what does an African country require at sea to prevent threats to its interests, if it's in terms of fishing communities, if it's in terms of disruptions of port infrastructure, if it's in terms of oil and gas extraction, which I know is not the sustainable aspect of this discussion, but it is what gets most people interested, unfortunately, in a sense. It's that need for a kind of a legal certainty over blocks at sea, which are then marketed. That's what seems to drive the agenda a lot as well. It's
Right.
not necessarily as much as it should be in terms of marine protected areas, which we're
Okay.
increasingly seeing, I think, with the research, the fact that these areas are quite small quite often and are overlapped by areas or interests which are often more less sustainable. Talking, like say, of oil and gas concessions and extraction industries. And when those are threatened, that's when we see the major interests drive up, or even from external partners or private security companies as well.
Yeah.
To have domestic African outwards ideas on what needs to be secured, how will we secure it, and to what end is finally emerging, but it's always had to battle against or being overshadowed by, let's say, the weight of history on one hand, but also recent sort of the land focus, the kind of overwhelming focus on the land, which we're emerging from. I mean, we wouldn't all be here if we weren't discussing it, but it is always going to be a challenge.
Thank you so much. Alex, if you can come in there, you spoke about the importance of, empowerment, or maybe I could say that's the primary objective of the Ocean Hub. That's what pushing to do, empowering the sector. What are the challenges that are preventing Africa to be more innovative in its ocean economy? And maybe add some of your experiences with the Ocean Hub operating in I won't say South Africa because your context is quite big, but yeah, all over. What challenges did you guys have towards that, and what solutions can you provide? In saying innovation and technology, what technology do we need?
Right, thanks for the question, Tabang. The challenges that Africa is facing are also challenges that other continents and parts of the world are facing. You can't improve what you cannot measure. I think there's a bunch of things that was raised by the colleagues on the panel about our understanding of the ocean, right? Ocean data and monitoring is something that needs to dramatically increase, and technology can definitely help with that. But it's a starting point. We need to start there. And also another thing is the infrastructure in Africa perhaps is more specific to the global south, not only the African continent. Infrastructure, there's a lot of artisanal fisheries out there which lack a value chain. They lack access to markets, infrastructure to help them access larger markets, for example. Yes. And for this, obviously, the governments and internationally, not only the national governments and international collaborations can come into the game to help foster and create those value chains, reaching out to more artisanal fisheries. We know that artisanal fisheries have been doing their deeds in a sustainable way until now, and it's a good means for the African continent to tap into the ocean resources in a sustainable manner. The mariculture hasn't been mentioned, but it's something that, in terms of seafood and fish production, sustainable mariculture obviously has a nice future ahead of itself as an industry. It also has all the benefits for tackling global warming and increasing coastal resilience. If you start farming seaweed, mussels, or oysters, which are filtering organisms or sinking carbon, sorry about this, into the shells or into the stems, you're also having a positive impact whilst on the environment, whilst providing sustaining the livelihoods of coastal communities. So there's a wealth of different opportunities that are rising now, and for which Africa then has already a good positioning. We don't have to deal with the inertia of a system that is in place in the larger, more industrialized countries or continents. We can start from where we are and grow sustainably from there without having to dismantle what's already in place. And that's an advantage that the continent has and must seize. And that's what we're trying to do with the colleagues around the table here in helping to empower the African continent and its people.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a question then I will pose to all of you before I will request you to do your closing remarks. But we'll start with Jean and then we'll go to Professor Rashid. We mentioned earlier, rather Timothy mentioned something about the Africa Free Trade Agreement. What opportunities are available in this regard, particularly where the ocean economy is concerned? When just also zooming into two critical words in this notion, free trade. And let's look into the advantages and disadvantages of that. I, for one, I'm a bit fearful seeing what it's already done and how it's already started. Yes, there's a lot of potential, but there's also a few limitations that this agreement presents. But let's contextualize it to the ocean economy. Is this an opportunity or a threat for us? Jean, maybe you can start us off there.
Yes, thank you. The AfCFTA is actually a very good initiative and an opportunity for us, actually, not a threat.
Yeah.
Although it's very slow in its implementation, this is expected because our continent, Africa, has diverse issues relating to government policies and what have you. Its implementation is very, very slow, and that's because we don't have a synergy yet. How we can really drive this project through to the benefit of us all in Africa. That's what I can say now. However, AfCFTA is a very good project. It's an advantage to Africa, but we really need to begin to walk the talk. There's a lot of talks going on, a lot of seminars on how it's effective on blue economy, how it's going to assist us to sustain our ocean economy. But then we really have to begin to work on the logistics. How can this be possible from one African country to another to be able to take advantage of this free trade? That is the problem that African countries are going through right now.
Can you extend on that, Professor Rashid, just taking advantage of the Africa Free Trade Agreement? I like what you said there, Jean, because that's exactly what we need to do. How can you extend on that, Prof?
Yeah, so my relationship with free trade is interesting. I mean, as an economist, I know trade, if done well, is good, right? I mean, we trade things and we take advantage of our different advantages. I mean, what we're good at and so on. But, in general, when it comes to the ocean, so far, the way the trade has been, a lot of the trade is between people in the global south and people in the global north, So the fish gets shipped away. I used to joke in the movie. I don't know if you know that movie. In the movie, we say, "Well, end of the line." In there, I got interviewed and I said something crazy. This was at the port in Senegal, and I said, "You see, if African fish, right, Namibian fish, hake, within 10 hours they catch it somewhere in Europe." And lift it and go. So the fish get visa immediately to get to Europe, but Africans can't get visa to get to Europe, right? So it's a kind of double standard, So and then the thing is the fish goes, and the people who get the money are not the communities, the fishing communities who lose their fish. We talk about small scale fishes. So no fish, no money. That is a double whammy. That is one thing we need to make sure. And that is where the African free trade system comes into play, I think. I think within the continent, we need more trade within countries, because that is how you move things around to meet the seafood needs of people in different parts. Different parts have different demands. And for example, hake, horse mackerel in Namibia, there's a lot of it, right? This, if it is smoked and dried and sent to West Africa, that would be a big market. So I see some positives there where we encourage internal trade, but make sure the fishers, if they lose their fish, they see some money. Otherwise, it just doesn't work well for people.
Okay, thank you for that. Marriott? Michael?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to come back to my earlier point. I think it's where Professor Rashid finished there on the money. It really comes down to global economics. Africa exists in a global economy. It doesn't exist on its own.
Sure.
And I guess at policymaker level as well as at industry level, there needs to be that consideration given to the trade-off between the larger economic or the export value of a product versus the need for domestic nutrition and lively food locally. So it's not an easy thing. I think part of the issue we have is that we don't have. I don't think the countries, and I'm not an economist by any means, so I may be speaking out of turn, but I don't think there's really agreement on the position between countries that we should be taking in that sense. And that's probably where we need to get to first, and it'll probably, I would imagine, differ between fisheries. I expect that the larger value markets are going to still be foreign, and that will probably mean that for the bulk of industrial scale fisheries that they will continue on the sort of economic benefit side, and probably in the smaller and artisanal fisheries, the free trade agreement will be more applicable at that level, I would think, in the short term at least.
Do you want to jump in there before we go to Timothy?
Sure. Prof, please excuse me, but there's the economist lens on this, on the blue economy, on natural resources, and whatever is drawn from natural resources is a flawed one, and I'll explain. The natural resources are free, right? It's free. You can pick a fish from the ocean, it's free. Right? It's provided to you for free. Yet it's a limited resource. The way we operate and the way we do our fishing, the vast majority of our fisheries are being overexploited, right? And the cost of that is not factored into the product that you're buying. What you're paying is essentially not the fish that's free. What you're buying is the money, the capital has been invested into building the solutions that brings the fish to you now, and the labor. Should it be the machine or the people, right? Mm-hmm. This is what you're paying for, but the fish is free. And because you can't put a cost of damage on something that's free, a portion of something that's worth zero is zero, you can't factor in the cost, the sort of the physical cost, the material cost of withdrawing things from nature in an unsustainable way into the economy, into the pricing, which is like the number one KPI for economists. So the opportunity of the free trade agreement is humongous, and it's great. It needs to be leveraged. The key is to factor in a few different things when it comes to trade, and the price of nature resources or natural resources is important to factor in. And the second one is enforcement. That comes down to Tim, security, very important. That's it for me.
Tim, they've already, tagged you.
Yeah.
Tag, you're in.
Got to get out there. I'm sort of stuck here in Pretoria, which is not you see. For the free trade agreement, one of the big contextual factors which we mustn't forget is there was such prompt buy-in from such a large number of states. There was a couple of maritime treaties and charters which were drawn up even under the Organization of African Unity, but the African Union over the last couple of years, the revised Transport Charter, the Lome Charter, which aren't getting the level of ratifications and buy-in, which suggests that they're a high priority, but the free trade agreement did. And it's like I say, got this buy-in from most countries. It's seen as a way of getting economic growth in the future. And let's not forget an interesting example that the first thing traded under the free trade agreement rules was a shipment of cosmetics from Ghana to Guinea I think in January this year. So its maritime dimension is crucial, or is you mentioned earlier, Tabang, sort of underappreciated. And I think one of the things we heard about political will, which I think you were mentioning, Michael, of it's sometimes used as a bit of a cliche. We don't really understand what it means to have political will in this context. And I think one of the major shifts is going to be that rather than valuing our exclusive zones as areas where, like say, concessions can be drawn up, blocks can be auctioned, fishing licenses can be bought and sold, is to actually reassess it from an African regional or national, but a pan-African perspective on where will this take us in 20 years' time. At what level do we want to have, a maritime contribution to our national economies? What kind of employment levels is feasible? Those kind of conversations are still not filtering right up to that top level.
Sure.
And it's our responsibility, everybody listening today, and taking this forward, because I never review it as a sort of a one-off conversation. We're part of a dynamic conversation. To continue to try and escalate the sustainability factor of this. There's too much prioritization, I find, of non-living resources, and especially around energy, which I think is a key forward. And one of the things which we've heard as well, which is key, is that African energy resources, be they gas, which can be exported from somewhere like Mozambique in the future, is that there is a market for that already. Countries like India are making long-term investments to change their energy markets into a gas-fired way. The futures which have gone in, companies like Total Energy as well had a previous deal with Iran, very dependent now on Mozambique going forward. Cool. So security over those areas is not just about legal certainty for these contracts. It will, the growth of piracy, for instance, if that were to re-emerge, the disruption which can occur to shipping lanes going through these regions now. Africa needs to be able to respond to that and to demonstrate a collective appreciation of the importance of maritime security of these areas. Otherwise, somebody else will. And I'm worried that's what will happen, because that will be a replication then of the last couple of centuries.
Thank you so much. I would say one word, but that is unfair. I would be robbing the subject matter, but we are closing now. In one word, what is your dream for the sustainable ocean economy? Just in one sentence. Alex, we can start with you.
Can you repeat that, Tabang, please?
I was just saying, in one sentence, what would be your dream or rather your dream to achieve a sustainable ocean economy? In one sentence, full stop, then we close.
That it is not only sustainable, but equitable. Not answering your question, but it's adding complexity.
Oh, okay, no. That's a good way to end off. Thank you so much. That was Alexis Groskop, CEO and co-founder of Ocean Hub Africa. Thank you so much, Alex. Michael, in one sentence, what is your dream for a sustainable ocean economy?
I would hope for us to be recognizing what sustainability is and all pulling in the same direction.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Mr. Michael Marriott, Senior Program Manager for Africa, Middle East and South Asia at Marine Stewardship Council. Please don't bother him for MSc specials and so forth. He is not that kind of MSc. It's a completely different ballgame. Thank you so much there, Mr. Marriott. We appreciate you. Jean, one sentence, just your dream of a sustainable ocean economy.
For us to build more national and international capacity for ocean industry foresight, including the assessment of future changes in ocean-based industries.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Truly appreciated. That was the president at African Women in Maritime. Truly appreciate your time there. Thank you. Professor Rashid?
Yeah, so I'll be happy if the world and Africa is able to achieve what I call infinity fish. Infinity fish, this is probably the first time you are hearing this. It's the title of my new book coming out next month.
Wow.
And infinity fish is the idea that we have the responsibility, the current generation, to pass the ocean and our fisheries and our nature to our grandchildren in a shape that we received or better, so that they can also do the same, and we keep passing it over. And that will help us achieve infinity fish, because then the benefit from fish and the ocean grows to infinity, because it can go on forever. It's a book coming out, Infinity Fish. Check it out. It's going to be fun.
Definitely. Please do send Kate and Beverly your details. We look forward to getting a couple of copies of that. That was Professor Rashid Somalia, from the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries, particularly the Unit of Fisheries Economics Research. You said you call yourself a ocean economist, isn't it?
Interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economist.
There we go.
There we go.
So much, Prof. Appreciate
Thank you, Chair.
Timothy, one sentence. Summarize your dream.
African aspirations are anchored by, or are carried by African-built ships, crewed by African seafarers, owned by Africans, in a safe, secure, and sustainable manner.
Ownership. That's what I prefer. Thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate your contributions that we've made. I know there could have been more, but please be patient with us. We're going to call you again. Please don't shy away from us. We need you. Africa needs you. The world needs you. So thank you so much for your contributions in this regard. We truly appreciate it, and all the best in your distinct industries and spaces that you're in. And on behalf of the world, thank you for the great impact that you've made to all of us. Thank you so much, and God bless. Thank you. Ciao, ciao, ciao. Thank you. Thank you.